Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third episode of the 15-Minute Time Limit Podcast. I'm your host, the phenomenal AJ, and let's get to it. This episode is strictly going to be about the Chris Jericho versus Kenny Omega match from Wrestle Kingdom 12. Mainly because I'm a big Chris Jericho guy and big WE guy, and this was probably one of my first matches of New Japan Pro Wrestling that I've watched. And one of my, I'm sorry to say, I know of and heard of Kenny Omega, but it's probably my second or third Kenny Omega match I've watched. And I'm just going to say, oh my god, holy shit. This kind of match is the reason why you like professional wrestling. It's completely a complete 180 from the over-scripted WWE material that we get all the time. This is what professional wrestling can and should be. And in defense of myself, I mean, I love professional wrestling, but you just can't watch wrestling all day, every day. Wish I could, but you gotta go to work sometimes. So if you're gonna shake your head at me for not watching too much New Japan or watching all of Kenny Omega's previous matches, then I don't know what to tell you. This match was contested in a no disqualification for the United States Championship. Commentary was Kevin Kelly and Don Callis. And one of the highlights of the match came early on from the suicide dive early on in the match from Kenny Omega to Chris Jericho, but Chris Jericho got out of the way and Omega went through the table. That was the first holy shit moment of the match. And then Chris Jericho from that maneuver went into the walls of Jericho and then hilariously beat up the referee and his son. The referee, Red Shoes, I'm not sure because I don't watch too much New Japan. They were referring to him as Red Shoes. He was wearing red shoes, so I guess referees got their own gimmicks too in New Japan. And his son there, not fans of Chris Jericho. And by the way, Chris Jericho playing the heel, an unscripted heel, is fantastic. He's the best. He gets heat from the live crowd and flipping them off a few times during the match. So it was great to see, even though he is a legend and fans probably, there were cheers as well, but fans, for the most part, booing him. He played the heel perfectly in this match. And also, shortly after that, there was a sequence that led up to the Jericho being on the ground, and then Omega set up a table, and he climbed up scaffolding, I guess, and gave Jericho a double foot stomp through a table, and that was pretty incredible to watch. I mean, you figured Jericho would get out of the way or maneuver out of that situation, but he didn't, and Omega collided with the double foot stomp on the on the table that was on Chris Jericho, and that was pretty cool. And I also want to, the reason why I announced the commentators early on is because it's good to see something not the WWE all the time, because just the unhinged commentary. They were talking like they were fans just watching the show when all this crazy shit was happening in the beginning. And it was refreshing to hear. I mean, when you watch Raw and SmackDown and you get the vanilla kind of commentating from Byron Saxton, by far is the worst one, his just bland and boring commentary. This was completely different from Kevin Kelly and Don Callis from watching this match. And it was good to hear. I mean, even the commentary threw in a couple of oh my gods and holy shits. And god damn it, I believe I heard one or two of them from the commentary team. So that was funny to listen to as well. It was refreshing, really. It's refreshing because you don't. It's different when you absorb yourself with too much WWE. You think that's the only thing or way to present professional wrestling, but there isn't. Even I noticed the turnbuckles, like that adds something else different to the show. How there's just one kind of turnbuckle that connects all the three ropes. I don't know. It had no. It doesn't add any value to matches, but it's just the presentation is different, which I enjoyed. And one thing I want to point out in my notes here, I written down like the countouts in New Japan going to 20 rather than 10. The referee was counting up to 20, and the commentary team was saying he's getting close to the 20 count. So it's different. It's neither good or good. It's neither better or worse than the 10 counts in WWE or Impact or NWA or any other wrestling organization. But it's just different. It's a different presentation. It gives, I guess, the wrestlers a lot more freedom on the outside to work with when you have a 20 count rather than a 10-second count when you're outside of the ring. So it was also no DQ, so I didn't understand why the count was happening. There was only one. A lot of the earlier moments in the match did happen outside, so there was only one 20 count going on in the match. But I also found that to be interesting and unique to the viewing pleasure that was this match. Another spot when they were outside of the ring that I want to talk about was Chris Jericho grabbing the camera from one of the workers on the outside of the ring and snapping pics of Kenny Omega, and then he had the camera up in the air and he was taking pictures of his middle finger he was giving the crowd, and that generated him some heat, and that was classic. And vintage, as Michael Cole would say, vintage heel Chris Jericho. What a dick that guy can be when he wants to be. And heel Chris Jericho dominated most of this match. And he was just, even part of some of his interactions with the crowd was, I find, the way he was chanting, Kenny, Kenny, Kenny to the crowd, trying to get the reaction from the crowd. It worked really, really well. The turning point of the match for me came when Omega pulled out the cold spray, I believe they were calling it, and apparently I have the minimal research I've done on that. He's used it before in his matches, and that was, for me, the turning point where Omega started to take over the match. And it was funny to see Omega's interaction with that bottle of spray that he got from underneath the ring. He sprayed it on himself, sprayed it in Jericho's eyes, and that was a highlight as well. Another thing I wrote down a lot of scribbling stuff here in my notes here. I just also want to talk about how the whole setup, this whole match being different, and the feel of it being completely different from WWE, is the in-match announcements. I'm guessing there was a time limit, and it was just the announcer letting the fans know what time they were in or at in the match, and I thought that was pretty unique and different as well. Just gave the whole match a different, or for me at least, a different feel. My next thing, I got a lot written down, so I'm trying to understand my own writing, whilst also staying in my 15-minute time limit that I've set for myself. And Kenny Omega's finisher, the one-winged angel, it took Jericho a couple walls of Jericho to create some good damage on Omega, and same thing with Omega. It took him a couple one-winged angels to get the W on Jericho, but the last one with the one on the chair could not have been more perfect. When Omega had Jericho on his shoulders, the chair was kind of out of place, but he still managed to somehow maneuver the chair into the proper positioning for him to drop Jericho on it. I thought that was pretty cool. It took a lot of wherewithal and I don't know, but it took a lot for Omega to do that, and it was not easy. And when he landed that one-winged angel on the chair, you kind of knew the match was over. I mean, it was a devastating maneuver, and it took a lot out of Jericho and Omega both. And my takeaway from this match is, I've said it to a couple friends already, that Kenny Omega really doesn't need WWE. He's one of those guys that's doing better on his own. If he were to make the jump, it'd probably be more detrimental to his professional wrestling career than would be positive. Maybe at least now he should stay away. Maybe he can come later on in his career, kind of like what Samoa Joe and AJ Styles are doing now. Just they've done everything on the indies and in New Japan, so might as well just jump on board. But right now, Kenny Omega, as is, does not need the WWE. And after this match was over, I've nothing but praise for Jericho, one of the greatest of all time. You can't complain with his, I hate to say age, but he's been wrestling for a long time, and people are saying this is probably one of his greatest match of his career. I don't know about that, but it was a fantastic match. It was the talk of the wrestling world leading up to it, and we'll see what happens after this. I mean, there was another show, and Chris Jericho did appear on it, the New Year's Dash, I believe it was called. Jericho was also there, but he's got also, the Jericho Rock and Wrestling cruise that he's got set up. I think that sounds like a lot of fun. So Jericho's got a lot going on for himself professionally outside of the world of wrestling. So fantastic match by both guys. I highly recommend you watch it if you're a professional wrestling fan, and if you're listening to this, you are a professional wrestling fan, because why else would you be listening to a professional wrestling fans podcast about professional wrestling? So that's my takeaway. It was a good match. Watch it. Learn from it. It is what wrestling can be and should be, and it was fantastic to watch. And I haven't watched the whole show, just watched the match. Maybe I'll get around to it eventually. As I stated before, I mean, you got a life to live. If I could, I'd be sitting at home watching wrestling all day, every day, but that just doesn't pay the bills. So I'm just, this is our third episode, and if the mic sounded kind of off, I've been playing around with the audio, just still kind of like learning and getting the hang of the program and working my mic and everything myself. So thanks for listening, everyone. Please watch the Jericho Omega match. Do yourself a favor. Tell your family and your friends to watch it as well. It is a fantastic work of art. See you guys next time. Probably do another podcast within a week or so. Just like, follow, email, comment, everything. 15-minute time limit podcast that's helped me grow this to be something real special. Thanks for listening. Take care, guys, and I'll see you next time.